Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life Unfiltered. How is everybody doing tonight?
Doing
Doing
good. How are
good.
you?
Good.
That's great. Weather's doing good in everywhere because it's been a beautiful day up here. We got up in the 50s, so
Yep.
beautiful weather.
Absolutely. Sorry, I lost my page that I have pulled
Yeah,
up.
she's still looking stuff up. So, but yeah, this has
I'm
been,
waiting for Bill to get on. I know how he calls me out. So
yeah, he
he
does.
messaged me today. He said, "This better be a good show tonight." I said, "I will do my best to provide that." So,
Well, if it ain't, we'll blame it on Bill. He ain't watching yet anyway, so.
oh, he'll be on.
Oh, man.
Okay. Oh, nope, that's not it. Oh, crap. Where's my page? Y'all are gonna see me lose my mind here in a second because man, I had this whole beginning planned out so perfectly. Hi, Bill. I told
Here's
you to
Bill.
Bill.
get
Hello,
on.
Bill.
Um, hold on, please be it.
Phoenix running behind Bill. She's trying to get all her pages lined up correctly so you don't call her out on it now. So,
I told them I told you I do my best to have a good show, and I just lost my whole page, Bill. Uh,
but yeah,
oh gosh, there's part of it, but
you found part of it. You lost the other
uh,
part.
well, no, it had both parts of what I wanted on the same page, and the page I
Okay.
just pulled up only has the bottom part. So I got to find the page I had that had all of it. This is terrible that we're live and this happens.
You were supposed to be prepared. I'm disappointed, Phoenix. I knew
Okay, maybe this is
Bill would
it.
call you out on it.
I know. Bill, I'm so sorry. Uh,
Well, while Phoenix is still looking stuff up,
I'll recover it, Bill.
James and Mitch, what did you guys think of your show the other night?
Had a great time.
Did real
Yep.
They
good,
probably slap me in the comments
huh?
and after.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
enjoy a good comment section. Keeps things lively.
That's it. You
Gotta
always got
have
to
it.
have a good comment section over there. Anybody over watching us, share the
Okay, I
show out so we can
But
get more
I
people interacted in the comments.
will say that we didn't get through nearly the amount of content that we had planned. We kind of got on tariffs, and then we started talking about YouTubers harassing people in public, and that was about it. Uh, so we're gonna do better this week to get through a little bit more content and have some. And then I also had the little hiccup with the videos and all that, so we'll have some more
Yeah, kind
content. We'll
of.
get through it this time. I have these magic cards I've been waiting to open, and then we didn't get through that segment, so I've been pissed about that since.
what?
Like sit here, I'm gonna have to start a whole new podcast just so I can open these damn cards.
Yeah,
Have to.
I already had to fight your video.
Do what?
I already
Yeah, to
had to
fight our
dispute
video.
and fight the video.
Oh, I figured that was gonna happen. Which platform?
Uh, YouTube, it didn't mess with unless you guys got messages on your YouTube. Mine didn't. It was on Facebook, of course.
Oh, Facebook.
Yeah, anytime we
What do they have
show
an issue with?
videos up on there, they always want to say something about it, but I always put in there fair use and free speech. If it's out there, I'm going to use it.
Yeah, Bill, I agree. We went a little too much with that the YouTubers thing. So we'll do better. Not I'll do better not to get caught up in having those deep debates whenever we have a lot of other things we could be talking about.
Yeah, but
Thank you for tuning in.
that was a good debate on that one.
Yeah, it
It
is,
was.
and it's only gonna continue as the podcasting and the alternate media becomes larger. There's gonna be First Amendment quite clear, but yeah, there's gonna be attempts to censor it. People have already been censored, and those things get abused. So no matter that's the problem is no matter how good of an intent you have, it gets abused and people lose their rights, and that's how it happens. It's the same thing with guns. That's Second Amendment, very clear, but yet here we are talking about, oh, let's ban because they have too many bullets in their magazine or whatever.
Right.
It's that slippery slope, and people say, oh, slippery slope. No, that's actually how it works. Okay, if you look at what happened in Canada, why they don't have access to firearms right now, that's exactly what they're planning here in the U.S.
Yeah.
So we just have to be vigilant and just be aware
I
of that.
know.
So I'm gonna stop talking about that now.
That's all right.
Sorry.
You
Phoenix, I'm
always
sorry.
remember, every
I don't wanna
conversation
hijack
like
your
that
show.
deals with the First Amendment and, of course, with the Second Amendment on the gun rights. They go together. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway,
Now, before we get on the topic for tonight, I'm going to throw out a quick comment on Bill's thing on the First Amendment. It's quite clear as well. Just my thoughts on it. And like I said, this isn't the topic, but since it's come up, just if we just have a quick comment, I'm good. But my thoughts on it is, like I said in the comment section on that topic, the First Amendment's not there for the speech that we like. It is there to protect the speech that we do not like. Because if we like it, who needs to protect it?
right.
It needs protection when we don't like it. And everybody has their own opinion on what is likable speech and what is not likable speech. So, James might say something tonight that I love, and Mitch or Carl might hate it and say, oh, no, I think that should be censored out because of whatever. So to them, they don't like something that he said based on something they might feel is a legit reason to not like it and think it should be shared. That right there is the very reason why we have the First Amendment
Right.
and why it needs to be protected. Or it could go the other way around, that they love it. And I'm the one that's like, oh, why is that being allowed out there? First Amendment speech, I think, also goes to media as well. Now, I think a direct threat, that is a criminal act. I should not be able to walk up to you and tell you I'm going to shoot your effing brains out. And, certain things. There can be some constraint that we can all as a society agree on. However, as far as the comment that I heard the other night was, if you say, I'm going to kill you if you do this, believe it or not, that is not criminal. I have been through that many, many times where I have had threats that way. And I was told in multiple states, because there is a condition, it is not considered a criminal threat. Somebody has to literally just say, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to blow your brains out, or some direct threat. But where I had an ex-boyfriend tell me, if you do this, I will kill you. And I called 911 and they said, our hands are tied because it's just before that boundary, but he's right skimming it to where we can't. He's not flat out saying he's going to kill you. He's saying, if you do this, he will, and a judge will throw it out because it is not is not necessarily considered a direct threat that he is just going to kill you. I went through it here in my house where a friend of my daughter's, right after we moved in this house, went and got his handgun, put it in his front pocket, sat on my recliner, and I was telling him to get out of my house. He kept telling me, make me BITCH, or you white FMBT, and all this. And I'm like, oh no, you got to go. Don't let the door hit you on your way out. So he turns in my recliner like this and starts tapping his hand on his pocket, which he had put his gun in. So he's now tapping his hand and his fingers on that gun. Now, keep in mind, I had pawned my handgun because somebody needed help and I didn't have the cash on me. So I pawned my handgun to help them out. So my gun was not at the house. So I had nothing. I mean, I guess I could have tried to grab my broom or mop, but what's that going to do against somebody who's got a gun? So he's tapping on that, telling me, come over here and make me and see what I do to you.
Mm.
Now, I take that as you threatening my life because I'm telling you to leave my house. You're telling me I will not leave. Come over here and make me and see what I do to you. And my son, who was home at the time, got in the middle and said, whoa, 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 nobody's going to talk to my mom that way. And I'm already getting my kids out of the living room because to me, this guy's letting me know he's getting ready to blow my head off right in front of my two children. I'm getting them back to the bedroom. Don't know what's happening with my son. Can't worry about him because I've got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old that I've got to worry about. I'm on the phone with 911. So I've got my 26-year-old out there. Don't know where he is. Even when the police came through my front door, and they came through like a SWAT team. I'm not joking. They came through like a literal SWAT team. I don't know how many showed up. All of them had their guns out, busting through my front door, going room to room, dragging everybody out front. He had hid the gun when he realized the police were coming. He hid the gun. They had to do a search for the gun. And do you know that they all said, unfortunately, we still cannot arrest him, even though he went and got the gun, because he did not aim it at you. And he did not say, I'm going to kill you. Again, I was told that the wording was skimming that line and said, come get me. Thanks, Bill. Yeah. And that'd be tragic, wouldn't it? And, but again, it was a condition. Come over here and make me and see what I do to you. So he didn't directly say, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to blow your brains out. So he got to walk. My kids were traumatized with nightmares. I got the handgun out of pawn. I went and sold it. I said, screw that. I'm buying a shotgun. I went and bought a 12 gauge. And I won't say where I keep it, but it is readily accessible and kept loaded. And I'm going to make sure that if that situation ever happens again, I'm not going to be like just pulling it out at the first thing. I'm not saying that. But if I need to pull that gun, I'm going to make sure you do not walk out of my house because I will never go through that in my house again. And I will never let my children go through that.
Right.
According to them, that is free speech and allowable because it's in that gray area. So I know I went longer, but I wanted to share that because the law does decipher between a condition being put with it. If you touch my son, I will kill you. Well, I'm not just saying I'm going to kill you, but I'm telling you, if you come put your hands on my 5-year-old, I'm going to kill you. Self-defense of my 5-year-old or whatever. So it's in that gray area and why, it is considered legally to still be First Amendment free speech. So that was brought up the other night. So I wanted to share from firsthand experience. It is not a crime.
Right.
So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that guy should have been put in handcuffs that last time. Don't tap on a gun as if anybody's going to feel threatened. But under the law, it was not an actual threat.
Right.
So what are y'all's thoughts on that?
And he should have been put in handcuffs because you weren't the only witness to it. Your 26-year-old son seen him sitting there with the gun in his pocket. So there's 2 witnesses there that can prove he had a gun on him at the time.
My 2 little ones saw it, and they would wake up having nightmares every single night for almost a month after, just terrified they were going to get shot. To have to come out of the room and see police with these big guns aimed down the hallway at my face, and my hallway's an L shape, and I came around that corner and I saw them and I went, and they're like, you're okay, you're the caller, aren't you? And I said, yes. And they said, come down here. I said, I got to get my little ones. They're still in my room. They said, no. We can't let you go back there. We don't know who else is still in the house. And if you're still in danger back there, you come down here, call your kids out where you're down here. And I called them out. And it still tears me up to think of their little faces coming around that hallway to see those guns aimed at their faces. And my little ones just look absolutely horrified. You know, to see their little bitty faces just going, and, you know, but, and it bit me in the butt. It was somebody I didn't know that I let move in my house because some people might think I'm not a compassionate person because sometimes I sound so blunt and crass and rude, you know. But the reality is, I am one of the most compassionate people that you could ever run into when someone needs help. And this was a friend of my daughter's I'd never met. And I let him move in, and this is what it turned into, you know. And
Right.
I had to, it changed a lot of my views as well, to
Well,
where I was
you-
like, I will not help the same way I used to because I cannot put my family through that. My family is my priority,
But
not
you
somebody
live
else.
to learn. You learn from that incident and everything. That's an important lesson
Right.
right there. And you have to have your kids understand that. You always learn from things
Yeah.
and stuff.
But like I said, my last statement kind of feeds into the topic tonight where I said it really slapped me in the face that my family is my priority.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I could still have compassion for the situation this guy was in, but to see how it turned out, such a slap in the face that he's not my problem. He was not my responsibility. I did it out of the goodness of my heart. And this is what happened to my family. And I helped at the expense of my family. And my family truly is my priority. They are my responsibility. And so the topic of the show is slightly different than just letting somebody move in or whatever. But it still goes for the same that that was my slap in the face, that as much as I've tried to help so many people outside of my home is truly my priority and my
Right.
responsibility.
That we can all agree on.
Yep.
You know, your home, your family, everything.
It's
Absolutely.
family first and it's America first, right? Same. It's the
That's
same
right.
idea. We got to take care of our stuff first, and
Yes.
hey, you know what though? Help if we can, honestly. But if you know,
Right.
you can't put your family in danger.
I
And
know. You
put 'em
help
at
as
that
much as
situation.
you can, just like
As much
what
as
we're
it hurts
doing
to
right now.
somebody else,
Phoenix
like,
knows the situation that we're in up here.
Mhm.
We got a phone call during the show and everything. One of the kids that we know real well had to leave an abusive relationship. And he left her in a house with no electricity, no gas, no water, nothing.
Mhm.
Here in the state of Missouri, in northern Missouri, where the temperatures were going to get down to 27, 28, and 29, right? So we got her and the two kids up here staying with us now. Now, she's not freeloading and everything. She went and got a job the day after we got her in here.
Right.
So that's one bonus, right? Okay, she went down here the street, little way. We have a low income housing addition down here and stuff. And they had two apartments available, and she's number two on the list. So everything's going to work out for her where we'll still be getting the kids when she works to help her out and everything. So that's one thing about helping people. They're not going to sit here and preload and do nothing. They've got to do something and get back on their feet and stuff. And I give her a lot of credit. That's what she's doing. She's got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Mhm.
So my house is in an uproar at times. Here the last 48 hours, let me tell you. It's been a long
Oh
time
yeah.
since I had a 1-year-old.
My heart goes out to you, Carl, because I know when I had my daughter and her kids living with me off and on for about 3 years, off and on. Man, even before I moved across from James and Amanda, that was happening. But then I lived across from them, and trust me, there were times that Amanda was my saving grace, my little hint of sanity. I would walk over to her front yard, and she'd be like, Phoenix, I can't leave. If you go buy me a tea, I'll buy you a tea. And I'm like, oh, you don't have to buy me a tea. I can buy it. I'll go get it. Because, man, that sounds good. No, no, no. You're going. I'm buying. And I would sit out on her front porch, and I didn't even have to talk about it. She'd just say, how are things going across the street? Say no more. And I
Right,
didn't
right.
talk.
But
But,
it's
it wasn't a not wanting to help. My daughters might be in here. She hasn't said hi if she is, but she will be. So I do want to be clear. It wasn't about not wanting to help. Of course I did. But I had my own two little ones.
hey,
And
Terry.
hey, and then she's got 4 kids. We had a 3-bedroom, and then my 16-year-old was there too. Now, he's not chaotic like the little ones, but to have that many little ones in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath place, that was, I don't know, James, would you say about 1,400 square feet? I mean,
Yep.
it we were kind of on top of each other, and I gladly helped her because I genuinely wanted to help. But man, it is chaotic to
It's a lot of
have.
people,
It
Yes,
is.
a lot of kids.
it is very chaotic.
I mean, it's like here. The 3-year-old we used to watch when he was a baby. So 3 years go by. He's he don't remember you situation.
Mm.
The 1-year-old we've never seen. So here we are with 2 kids. They're in a strange place. And it's like
Mhm.
I tell their mom, it's going to take him a little while to acclimate herself back in here. Now, the baby, he's no problem. He's become my boy already. I mean, as soon as he sees me, he wants to get up, get on my shoulder, and just lay his head. It's the comfort deal
Mhm.
and everything, you know, and stuff. So we're we're making it through it. It's tight around here, but we're making it through it.
Yeah, and that's what I think. It's all about is
Yep,
not
they're
having that
home.
humanity inside of us. But
Yeah.
also
It
understanding
may
that
be
there
noisy here in a second. I may have to shut the mic off here in a second when they come in the door because the dogs are going to go crazy. And
real quick, Mitch, did you have anything you wanted to say about this before we go on with the topic?
No, no, I think you covered it pretty good.
Okay. Um, so Carl, is it okay if I go ahead and introduce the topic and start it? Reason being, I kind of want to read something off of here, and then I know I talk, and I don't want to talk over people, so I'm gonna try to just sit back and let y'all
Mhm.
respond with y'all's thoughts to this. So, um, there was, a difference of opinion on what is constitutional and what is not constitutional. I guess is the best way to put it. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I made some comments the other night on what I thought was constitutional. And I think if a law is passed, um, but it's not constitutional and it's taking money from us, it is theft, legalized theft, but still theft, and a lot of our laws and things that we are paying for are not constitutional. Therefore, I do, my point of view is that it is the government committing theft on its own citizens. some of these things also borderline socialism. And on the show the other night, I heard somebody make the argument, we don't like socialism, we stand against socialism, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here going, you're proving my point. What is socialism? It is taking from them to give to them. Hello. So I'm sitting here ranting at my monitor like y'all just made one of my arguments for me. Because I think, some of our things do somewhat borderline. Aw.
Oh,
Hi, handsome. So anybody who watches the show who does not, we are called Life Unfiltered, not just because of topics, but hey, we can't script everything that happens in life, even when we're live on the show. Sometimes life just happens and we do our best to roll with it on here. So Bill says oh gosh, let me get my glasses actually. Our forefathers made the Constitution, so it can't be construed, and it's understandable. Therefore, it requires no debate. Sorry, folks, and yeah, misconstrued. I got it, Bill. So, and that's where I stand from. Now, I can approach topics from an emotional standpoint, but we can't live our life based on emotional arguments. Like I had told Bill before, sorry, Bill, just reading your comment. I told Carl even today, a little bit, and his wife Tammy, I said some of the biggest mistakes in my life is when I acted based on emotion and no logic. And it's okay to have emotion brought into things, but we can't base our life based on emotional arguments. At some point, logic and facts have to come into play as well. And you have to kind of balance that out. We are very compassionate people, most of us. There are some people, I would say, in the world that have no compassion, no feeling for people, life, etc. But the bulk of us, I think, very much have that very human side where we have compassion for people. We don't like to see people suffer and hurt. I'm not a stranger to that. Those who know me a while know very well. I'm not a stranger to that. However, where do facts and logic come into play as well if we're going to talk about whether it's legal or not with some of the laws we pass? And in talking about the logical side, and I take the emotion out of it, that's where a lot of people think I sound very harsh and crass and judgmental. And, I'm truly not trying to come across that way. I do recognize it sounds that way, but that's not my intention. So I want to make that clear tonight as I kind of voice some of my thoughts. I am my attitude or crassness, whatever, rudeness, just comes from I'm not making an emotional argument. We all know the emotional arguments. Well, what are we supposed to do? Just watch this or watch that and blah, 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 blah. We all know all those arguments. So I agree. About 90% of the laws can be taken off the books because there's always going to be an argument, and our government knows how to use our emotions to lead us by the nose into passing whatever laws they want passed.
Right.
I talked about historical things, including the Vietnam War. We were against the Vietnam War, so when they do start playing on emotion, oh, they're killing babies. The North is taking babies out of their cribs, laying them to die on sidewalks, and this and that. Well, Americans are compassionate. Let's go to war. Once we're at war, well, now we don't want the people supporting war, so they start putting out propaganda. Well, they're baby killers. They're just saw your comment about that. So they're, but they start putting out propaganda about our soldiers and all the horrors of what they're doing, other horrors of war, and just some bad people out there killing babies, raping women, whatever. Well, of course. But, our soldiers were out there genuinely fighting a war. To get into the war, we relied about, the war singer's father, who was an admiral on the ship of the Tatanka Bay, getting blown up, and it came out that they flat out lied to us. But they played on our emotions to go to war. then they played on our emotions to get us out of war. You know, it was happening before that, and it still happens today. So that's why I say we have to be careful about just looking and being led by emotion. We have to, if we're going to talk about passing laws and whether it's legal or not, we have to kind of leave the emotion on the side, in my opinion, to some extent, and look at, you know, the logical side. Is it genuinely legal or not for the government to be taking everything that they are to give to other people, whether it's in our own country, other countries, whatever? Most of it is not constitutional. So that was kind of my view in response to a topic the other night, which was on, you know, like food stamps and, you know, programs like that. And I want to read something, and then I'm going to let Mitch and James kind of expand a little bit more now that they've had more time to think about what I said. I had time to think about what they said, and I want the show to go in a very positive direction. We may not all leave the show agreeing 100%. We don't have to leave 100%. If we can find the things where we have common ground and meet there and then say, okay, so how do we bring all this together, you know, and what are things that we can do? Because there have to be some changes made, you know, to make this a better system. We're never going to go backwards. I get that, but it doesn't mean that I don't still see it as the government committing fraud on and theft on their own people. But you know, we're not going to reverse all these laws. So where can we find common ground, and what are some possible solutions that we can do, that as a society, maybe we can start trying to demand of our lawmakers to make things a little bit better for everyone involved, not just a select group of people in our country. And so I want to read something. Bill's heard it before because Bill knows I'm a history buff. And so bear with me, Bill. You're going to hear it again. So we all know who Davy Crockett is. And he was in Congress. He served 2 terms in Congress in the 1800s. And it was from 1827 to 1831. And then he served a second term from 1832 to 1835. Now, there were some situations happening, and Congress was going to vote on taking taxes from its citizens to give to other people that were in need at the time. So I want to read Davy Crockett's speech to Congress real quick. He says, Mr. Speaker, I have as much respect for the memory of the deceased and as much sympathy for the sufferings of the living, if suffering there be, as any man in this house. But we must not permit our respect for the dead or our sympathy for a part of the living to lead us into an act of injustice to the balance of the living. I will not go into an argument to prove that Congress has no power to appropriate this money as an act of charity. Every member upon this floor knows it. We have the right as individuals to give away as much of our own money as we please in charity. But as members of Congress, we have no right so to appropriate $1 of the public's money. Some eloquent appeals have been made to us upon the ground that it is a debt due to the deceased. Mr. Speaker, the deceased lived long enough after the close of the war. He was in office to the day of his death, and I have never heard that the government was in arrears to him. So this was in response to someone who died. They wanted to appropriate money to the family, etc., you know, widows. So there is also a the rest of the speech is every man in this house knows it is not a debt. We cannot, without the grossest corruption, appropriate this money as the payment of a debt. We have not the semblance of authority to appropriate it as charity. So he makes a distinction, a debt or charity. They don't have the authority to take from these people to give to these people. That is not within Congress's purview. Um, so he goes on to finish saying, Mr. Speaker, I have said we have the right to give as much money of our own as we please. I am the poorest man on this floor. I cannot vote for this bill, but I will give 1 week's pay to the object. If every member of Congress will do the same, it will amount to more than the bill asks. So right there, there was an acknowledgement, and the bill did not pass because the majority of Congress, except for I want to say about 3, agreed that Congress does not have the money to take from those who are still alive to give to those who are in need for charity. Because why? It's not their money. Congress didn't work for it. The citizens went and worked to earn their money. So if you take it from the people who work for it, it's their money. If you take it from them with no option, you're saying you will pay this and we're going to give it to these people, no matter how much we have compassion, it is theft. And Congress does not have that authority. But it said he took a seat. Nobody replied. The bill was put up at its passage, and instead of passing unanimously, it was opposed, and the bill was lost. And I want to read one more thing real quick, and then I'm going to end it and say nothing else and let you guys kind of respond to this. Because this is where my logical argument comes in when I kept saying the other night, it is theft. It is legalized theft, and Congress does not have the authority to do it. But they do a lot of stuff they don't constitutionally have the authority to do. So either we stand by the Constitution or we don't. So I'm hoping there can be some middle ground that we can come to, that some of these programs, there's people out there in need. What do we do today? Because our society is no longer what it used to be, where we took care of people. We used to have a society that took care of their elderly, their disabled, etc. Now we have a society where we'd rather throw our elderly grandparents and parents in nursing homes because we're too busy or too whatever with life. We don't want to really step up and take care of our disabled family members because, well, life, we got to live life, whatever your reasons are, and some may be legit. I don't have the knowledge to do it depending on the situation, but we're more a society where we do not take hi William, we don't take responsibility for our family like we used to back then. So, I said at one point, I think two things can be true at once. I can see that we are in a day and time where maybe there is a need for welfare, et cetera, things like that. But that also does not change the fact that in my opinion, that when these laws were passed, Congress didn't have the authority. And it's still legalized theft. I work for my money. Why do I not have say over my money? How do you get to, not you personally, anybody watching, but you as in the government, how do you get to just come in and tell me you're taking the money I work for to give to somebody else? I've got my own family to worry about. If I have it to help in some way, I can do that. But sometimes I may not have it, and you're literally taking more and more money for everybody else, whether it's citizens in need here, citizens overseas, are not citizens, are there, but I mean other countries. But there's always people needing help. We're never going to get away from people needing help. So where does it stop? And that was the point that Davy Crockett was making. If we do this, where does it stop? Because people are always going to be in need. So we'll have to continue to tax and tax and tax to keep taking care of everybody, So where does it end? So I want to read one more thing and then I'm just going to stop. And this is just something I read. Now there's some dispute as to whether this actually happened, but apparently this was a conversation that Davy Crockett responded to as far as why he voted this way, and a constituent who told him he would not vote for him for a second term. Um, and Davy Crockett said, several years ago, I was one evening standing on the steps of the Capitol with some other members of Congress when our attention was attracted by a great light over in Georgetown. Oh, well, the Georgetown fire did happen, but I'm just saying the conversation with the farmer when I get to that. He said it was evidently a large fire. We jumped into a hack and drove over as fast as we could. In spite of all that could be done, many houses were burned and many families made homeless. And besides, some of them had lost all but the clothes they had on. The weather was very cold, and when I saw so many women and children suffering, I felt that something ought to be done for them. The next morning, a bill was introduced appropriating 20,000 for their relief. So he's going back before he stood up to Congress in what I just read. This story is what led to him standing up to Congress saying we can't do it. He said the next morning a bill was introduced appropriating $20,000 for their relief. We put aside all other business and rushed it through as soon as it could be done. The next summer, when it began to be time to think about the election, I concluded I would take a scout around among the boys in my district. I had no opposition there, but as the election was some time off, I did not know what might turn up. When riding one day in a part of my district in which I was more of a stranger than any other, I saw a man in a field plowing and coming toward the road. I gauged my gait so that we should meet as he made it to the fence. As he came up, I spoke to the man. He replied politely, but as I thought, rather coldly. I began, well, friend, I am one of those unfortunate beings called candidates, and the man interrupted, saying, yes, I know who you are. You are Colonel Crockett. I have seen you once before and voted for you the last time you were elected. I suppose you are out electioneering now, but you had better not waste your time or mine. I shall not vote for you again. This was the soft Dolager, and I begged him to tell me what was the matter. Well, Colonel, it is hardly worthwhile to waste time or words upon it. I do not see how it can be mended. But you gave a vote last winter, which shows that you either not the capacity to understand the Constitution or that you are wanting the honesty and firmness to be guided by it. In either case, you are not the man to represent me. But I beg your pardon for expressing it in that way. I did not intend to avail myself of the privilege of the constituent to speak plainly to a candidate for the purpose of insulting or you. I intend by it only to say that your understanding of the Constitution is very different from mine. And I will say to you what, but for my rudeness, I should not have said that I believe you to be honest, but an understanding of the Constitution different from mine, I cannot overlook. Because the Constitution, to be worth anything, must be held sacred and rigidly observed in all of its provisions. The man who wields power and misinterprets it is more dangerous the more honest he is. I admit the truth of all you say, but there must be some mistake about it, for I do not remember that I gave any vote last winter upon any constitutional question. No, Colonel, there is no mistake. Though I live here in the backwoods and seldom go from home, I take the papers from Washington and read very carefully all the proceedings of Congress. My papers say that last winter you voted for a bill to appropriate $20,000 to some sufferers by a fire in Georgetown. Is that true? Well, my friend, I may as well own up. You have got me there. But certainly nobody will complain that in a great and rich country like ours, should the insignificant sum of 20,000 to relieve its suffering women and children, particularly with a full and overflowing treasury. And I am sure if you had been there, you would have done just as I did. It's not the amount, Colonel, that I complain of, the principle. In the first place, the government ought to have in the treasury no more than enough for its legitimate purposes. But that has nothing to you with the question. The power of collecting and dispersing money at pleasure is the most dangerous power that can be entrusted to man, particularly under our system of collecting revenue by a tariff, which reaches every man in the country, no matter how poor he may be. And the poorer he is, the more he pays in proportion to his means. What is worse, it presses upon him without his knowledge where the weight centers. For there is not a man in the United States who can ever guess how much he pays to the government. So you see that while you are contributing to relieve one, you are drawing it from thousands who are even worse off than he. If you had the right to give anything, the amount was simply a matter. Oops, my screen jumped. Hold on. If you had the right to give anything, the amount was simply a matter of discretion with you, and you had as much right to give 20 million as 20,000. If you have the right to give one, you have the right to give all. And as the Constitution neither defines charity nor stipulates the amount, you are at liberty to give to any and everything which you may believe or profess to believe is a charity, and to give to all, and you are at liberty to give to any and everything that you may believe to profess or believe is a charity to any amount you think proper. You will very easily perceive what a wide door this would open for fraud and corruption and favoritism on the one hand, and for robbing the people on the other hand. No, Colonel, Congress has no right to give charity. Individual members may give as much of their own money as they please, but they have no right to touch uh, a dollar of the public money for that purpose. If twice as many houses had been burned in this county as in Georgetown, neither you nor any other member of Congress would have thought of appropriating a dollar for our relief. There are about 240 members of Congress. If they had shown their sympathy for the sufferers by contributing each 1 week's pay, it would have made over 13,000. There are plenty of wealthy men in and around Washington who could have given 20,000 without depriving themselves of even the luxury of life. The congressmen chose to keep their own money, which, if it reports be true, some of them spend not very creditably. And the people about Washington no doubt applaud you for relieving them from the necessity of giving by giving what was not yours to give. The people have delegated to Congress by the Constitution the power to do certain things. To do these is authorized to collect and pay monies, and for nothing else. Everything beyond is usurpation and a violation of the Constitution. So that is why I take the stand that I do when I say it is legalized theft, and Congress does not have the authority to do it. So now that is a separate argument from the compassionate side of it. So, like I said, there are some topics where two things can be true at once. That is it actually theft? Yes. Are there laws passed that went against the Constitution that allow it? Yes. But do we also have compassion for people, and do we want to help? Yes. But that compassion doesn't change whether or not what we give to people in need and take from people who do not get permission with their own money. It does not change the fact that they are being robbed and stolen from. And here's the one last statement I'm going to make on it, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys, is it is the middle class that suffers the worst. When you're under a certain income, you get all your tax money back. Plus, a lot of them, if you have children and stuff, get under unearned income, so they get back even more. So, and by the end of the year, they're truly not paying into this, although they're collecting because they get it all back. The rich know how to write off stuff, put things under businesses, and do all that. So, yes, they pay a lot in taxes for businesses, things like that, but there are still a lot of ways they can cover things. Who gets hurt the worst are people like me and my husband who are in the middle class. We pay out about 30,000 in taxes, and on average are lucky to get back 5 or 6. So who gets robbed from the most is not the rich and it's not the poor. It's the poor who get to collect off the middle class who are still suffering. And then when we run into a rough time, cannot even access that money because they still see us as middle class and making too much money. And life might throw us a curveball that throws us in a jam like my husband and I were in the summer before moving to this house. And yet they still look at his income. They didn't take into account our situation. They said he still makes too much money. So we're being told we have to pay into a system to help other people that we can never touch, no matter how bad we need the money. So how is it not theft to the middle class? When we didn't vote on it, we have no say. It is just taken out of our check before we ever get it. And it's not for things we all mutually use, for roads that we all use or things like that. It is used to help other people as a form of charity. But no matter how bad we get hurt, it's also a form of charity that we never get to tap into our own money that we pay in. So, we can have compassion, but there's still, I think, is there no acknowledgement that technically Congress was wrong for passing this? But then shame on our society for bringing us to where we took care of our own families and didn't need it the same way. And we're at a point to where nowadays we probably do need it because there's a lot of people out there with no support system. So getting into the compassionate argument, what do you do? So that's where I'm gonna turn it over to you guys and say, where do y'all agree? Where do y'all disagree? And let's see where we can find some agreement, if any, and then go from there on to what do we do now that we're here. And then I have some ideas as well on that after talking to Carl's wife today, who, man, I'll tell you what, I love that conversation. And we had some ideas on some changes that can be made. So y'all take it away from there.
Okay. Well, it was a great speech, definitely, 100%. Um, I like a lot of what David Crockett says. I agree with a lot of what David Crockett says. Um, as far as it being lawful or unlawful with the whole situation, um, it's lawful based on the people we voted in, unfortunately. Whether or not I agree with those laws got passed by the people we put in there. And yeah, politicians can change their mind like David Crockett did 100%. And good on him for seeing the error of his ways. Unfortunately, what it had already been done. It had already been passed. It had already been taken care of. So I don't know if I'd so much call it theft. Also, I wouldn't necessarily call it fraud because we're all well aware of money being taken out for the social benefit or for the social benefits. So I wouldn't call it fraud. Nobody's misleading you there. Um, and as far as is the system abused? Absolutely. I do not argue that at all. The system is heavily abused. It needs a complete revamp and an overhaul. And probably the vast majority of people on government assistance probably don't need government assistance. I think it should be a requirement to work. I think it should be a requirement to pass a drug screen. I think these are pretty basic things. I don't think you should be able to buy hot food with food stamps. I don't think you should be able to buy alcohol and tobacco, which most states you can't. But I also don't think you should be able to buy, soda and things like that. You should be limited more towards your commodities, peanut butter, eggs, bread, sugar, flour, those things I think should be much more limited. Which you have the SNAP program, but they're two different completely programs. Uh, I believe much more in the SNAP program than I do the food
Bless
stamp
you.
program. Uh, as far as determining, who should get those benefits, I mean, I don't agree with how we determine. I think there's definitely some adjustment, but I think given our current situation in our country, it's about as good as you're going to squeeze out. You're never going to get all the juice out of the orange. You're always going to be left with something in there that you could have done better with. And I think that's where we are as a nation. Now, with benefits, that's where we have this problem. Is like you were talking about, you pay in benefits your entire life, and you may never even qualify for them. And a lot of people do fall into that, especially in blue states like California. California is a prime example of people paying into benefits and then not being able to receive them because they still make $70,000 a year. $70,000 is not necessarily a livable wage in California. Not if you're supporting a family. Where $60,000 here in Missouri is a much more livable wage. You can do that. So in that discrepancy, I see where we struggle trying to find where that bar is on who we should allow to have benefits and who we shouldn't allow to have benefits. I don't necessarily think it should even be so much based on income. I think it should be based on your ability to work. If you're able to get out there and you're able to work part time, then good. You know, you'll get limited benefits. If you're 100% disabled or you're on the autism spectrum all the way at the end, you're non-functioning or you're nonverbal, whatever it is, we have a duty as society to do something about that. I mean, otherwise, what would you have them cast out to the wolves? I mean, it's an option. It's totally an option to cast out the disabled to the wolves, but I think we've kind of grown past that in this day and age. So we have to have these programs where we can afford to take care of these people that are just disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged. Like I said, a lot of corruption, a lot of misuse being done with the Medicaid and food stamps and all of those. But I really don't think you can get away from it. I think it's a required program. I don't think it's theft because all these things were voted in by politicians that we voted in. Now those politicians might have changed their mind and realized the error of their ways, but that takes a whole nother situation and a whole nother set of circumstances to make that change. So at the time, you leave and to learn, and it's a hard lesson and a hard pill to swallow, but it's not criminal. You know, there's a lot of situations where like as you were talking about with what may be to you as a life-threatening experience and you felt life-threatened, the police are sitting there and telling you, no, there's nothing we can do because he technically didn't use the correct terminology. So, when it comes down to arguing over little semantics like that, I don't think it really makes a difference. I think you got to have these programs. I think you can change the language of the laws, and I think they do need to be changed. I think we need to have more universal language in laws from state to state. Like gun laws is a great example. Some states don't use the word brandishing. Some states use the word expose. Some states use the word possess. Some states use the word hold in hand. So I think that's a big part of the issue of some of our laws is we need to get universal verbiage. We need to get an understanding of dictionary terms, what words mean, because I think a lot of people are getting away from what words mean and don't
Exactly,
understand
Bill.
the definitions of certain words, and that's a huge problem. And there's always going to be room left for interpretation. Unfortunately, life is full of interpretation from the Bible to the strictest of laws. And a law is nothing but a contract. And as a general rule, the contract benefits the person who didn't write it. There's always loopholes to be found, and they don't ever benefit the person that wrote the contract. So that's where the welfare system comes in. They're finding the loopholes. They're finding the holes and the problems in that contract, in that law that is allowing them to exploit the system. Is it okay? No. Do we need a new contract, a new law? 100% to get this under control. Absolutely. But we cannot forgo these individuals that just cannot provide for themselves. That's all I've got to
Yeah.
say.
No.
I mean, yeah, I just add on to that a little bit. So, like, the Constitution provides, Congress with the ability to pass laws and collect taxes for the general welfare of the public. So that is where all of this comes from, is the general welfare. And because it is such a broad definition, that's why you end up with this type of conversation of like, how are we passing laws and saying it's okay to take from one person and give to another? So that's unfortunately where all of that comes from, because obviously the forefathers, the framers of the Constitution, were smart enough to realize that they couldn't write laws for everything that could possibly happen ever, nor would that uh, be advisable anyway. So that they delegated those powers through the structure of the government to give the nation a chance to adapt to whatever, the current or future environment may be, and delegate those powers out. So that's kind of where that comes from. I think both of y'all have said pretty much the same thing, though, is that taking from someone to give to someone else who is more than capable of providing for themselves is absolute nonsense, and shouldn't
Yes.
be a thing. And exactly, Bill, welfare is a system that went off the rails, as I believe it was intended to do. So yeah, it
I,
went
I,
off the
I agree with
rails.
you, Bill.
I think the intent was good. We all have the same. I think we all agree that unfortunately, there are people, and let's take a moment to thank God that we're all blessed, that we're able bodied people for the most part, right? And we have our faculties about us, and we live in the United States. Uh, Man, it's like winning the lottery every day. You think about, people, kids in Africa or in other countries that are dirt poor and living in dirt without electricity, no clean water, no food. I mean, we can talk about how much we don't like someone taking money from us and giving it to someone else, but just remember there are people with absolutely nothing in this world. And the fact that we wake up every day in this country and we get on here and complain about these little things, we are absolutely blessed, and we owe everything to God for that. So just, thank you, God, for that. But I think that's where we kind of agree that taking from able-bodied people to give to other able-bodied people who are just too lazy, or actually maybe not even too lazy, but have just almost been victims of a society or a system that have convinced them that that's the best way for them to live. Or the system is even set up in some cases where it is more beneficial for them to live off of the system than it is for them to go find a job and have those
Mhm.
benefits, right? I mean, there
Yeah.
are people that won't go get a job and work a certain amount of hours, otherwise they'll lose their insurance from the state. And
Yep.
because of that, then you have that limiting factor. Now, it would be stupid to do that, right? Because health insurance is crazy expensive, and then you're going to not be able to pay your light bill, right? So then you're not going to have power or clean water or a roof over your head, right? You can't feed your children. So you have to do what you have to do. And unfortunately, in those situations, the system's been set up that the apple is too ripe from the government, right? So that's the other part of it is, what are we giving to people who may need it, even if they are able-bodied? I think helping people after they lose a job or something like that for a short amount of time, but eventually, yeah, you have to get back on the horse and ride out of town, right? Um, but how much are we giving to people who we give to, right? And so that's the other thing, like Mitch was saying. Should people be able to buy Cheetos with their SNAP money? No, because if you really go back and you think about like the whole purpose of helping these people out is to help them survive. Uh, you don't need
Help provide a
Cheetos and
better life.
Pepsi and say what, Mitch? Sustain life,
I
right?
say it's to help provide a better life. It's to help improve their state of life. And by
Well,
giving them these junk foods and these sodas, you're not improving their life. You
well,
might
that's
be
true too. But I
keeping
think
them
it's
alive, but you're not
right.
improving it.
I think it's to sustain life, right? It's so
Yeah,
that way they
exactly.
don't
Yeah.
starve to death. Yes, yeah. So not necessarily improve. It should improve, but actually giving them the ability to soda and Cheetos. And I mean, I'm not hating on those brands. If you drink Pepsi or you eat Cheetos, I'm not hating on those things. Okay, I like Cheetos too. Okay, but I pay for it out of my own money. I don't, take it from the state. So thankfully, we have a administration now that is looking at that and trying to make America healthy again. And so hopefully that is something that comes out of that, because I've heard them specifically talk about this as taking away the ability for people on government assistance to buy soda and Cheetos and junk food and all this stuff, because really the whole point is to sustain life, so that way somebody doesn't starve in the streets. And I think that's where that idea of the general welfare of the public comes into play, because then you don't have a bunch of homeless people that just lost their jobs or, you know, whatever, living on the streets. So that's the idea of like that short term. And then for the long term, I think again we agree on this, is that if you're able-bodied to be able to provide for yourself, you shouldn't the government shouldn't take from me and give to you, right? But if unfortunately, you know, there are people born with severe disabilities. We have veterans that come back that are completely disabled. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why somebody is actually physically or mentally incapable of providing for themselves. And so as a society, we have to really, you know, think about, uh, do we let those people just survive the best they can? And what does that look like, right? Because then you're, you know, putting people out on the streets. And unfortunately, the folks that really need the help the most, you're gonna have people in those situations that are abandoned by their their family because they are, you know, high needs person. People, I mean, mothers leave their children every day. I can't for the life of me understand that, but it happens. You have these damn baby drop boxes now. I It's one of those things, like, you just drop your kid
Right.
off in a fucking basket and then you're on with your life. I mean,
The
good lord.
alternative
But
is worse.
yeah, and you're right, Mitch, and that's why they have it. But still, the idea in my mind of, you know, um, but is it worse, or is it just they think that it's worse, right? Because that's what I was talking about with people that get this idea in their head, that are conditioned by society and the media and this culture, that they have to have this type of life. They have to have XYZ, that they're limited by all these things, when really a lot of it is just, it's an excuse to live a certain way.
Right.
And that's kind of my problem. And so I think that by making those things more readily available and easily accessible, you're encouraging that type of behavior. And unfortunately, we've seen that with abortions and with suicides in Canada, and with the dropping the babies off and all that. I mean, you see a higher rate of those things whenever you make it more readily available. So the argument is, were those people going to abuse those children regardless, or are you providing an easy out for maybe a teenage mother who thinks that she has to go to college and get a degree before she can have a family, right? Because it is scary taking on that amount of responsibility in your lifetime. And uh, you know, but if you, I think all too often it's one of those things that's it's an easy out. So anyway, I know
I,
that's
I
kind
want
of
to push
a
back
little
a little
far of
bit
what
on
we were
that.
talking about. But
Hold on.
yeah,
I'm going
yeah,
to
go
push back
ahead.
just a second on that. On the easy out, I don't necessarily think it's an easy out. The easy out is abortion. That is been proven time and time again that women that are going to resort to giving up their child will resort to abortion far, far before they ever drop a baby in a box, which I think is a better outcome, is a child in a box versus an abortion, or a child left out in the elements to die, which we see all too many times of babies found in trash cans. And that's just horrible, and I could never imagine leaving a baby to die like that. But I don't think that afterlife care is nearly as hard on the system as, actually, I'm going to retract that statement because I don't necessarily believe that if I think about it a little bit more. Um, Prevention is obviously going to be the best key to solving a lot of these problems. If you can prevent the problem, you don't have to worry about solving it. So I think a lot of it, like Bill was saying, comes with good education. Um, there's a ton of vacant houses. There's a ton of vacant houses in the area I live in. There's no reason for them not to be lived in. aside from the fact that um, people aren't happy with they're not getting enough money for rent or their whatever reason. Or then the other side of the coin is you have the people that don't want to work. They're too lazy. It's too easy to sit on a corner and collect a dollar. And I think it really comes down to your local cities and your state ordinances and laws to get control of this. We had a huge epidemic with the homelessness in our city. There's a panhandle on every single street corner. And our city started a program where they went out and you were no longer allowed to panhandle on street corners, but they also drop like donation boxes for the local shelters at those streetlights and stuff like that. Like people collecting donations a lot more for the shelters, and those people that are homeless are diverted or routed to the shelters for help, which is a much better way of managing the money, in my opinion, because these shelters aren't providing these people with alcohol or drugs or anything like that. If these people want wellness, if they want food, if they want shelter, they will seek out these places and they will get it. If they want to chase their next buzz, then they're going to sit on the corner and beg for that dollar. And I think it's nice. It's a great idea to think, yeah, all of them want a job. All of them would love to build their own house and they would keep it up and running and they do all this. A lot of them you can give a house and it wouldn't last 6 months, unfortunately. And that's where we have failed as society. We've allowed a society to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. We are okay with the 60-hour work week. We're okay with also being homeless. Like, we've lost our standards. We've lost what it meant to be human. We're no longer individuals. We're just cogs in the machine. And sometimes the cogs are working and sometimes the cogs are laying on the ground, but it's still a hunk of cog, you know? It doesn't do anything. It's worthless material. And that's where so many of us have become, is just NPCs in this world. And I'm running in circles here. But my point is that you're going to have that group that has to have help. You're going to have that group that is absolutely going to abuse the help. And you're going to always have the hardest time trying to find that balance. At the end of the day, I mean, that's my three main points.
Yeah, I think kind of the point is that, we agree that, able-bodied people should, you shouldn't take away from someone to give to an able-bodied person, right? I don't think that anybody's going to argue or contend that, unless it's like a short-term deal, whatever, to help the person not end up on the street for the day or whatever. Even then, but yeah, I think really the root of the problem comes down to the people that are abusing the system, like you said. So that's
People
really
that's abusing the system, the caseworkers that don't do their correct job,
oh man,
and
and cost.
everything.
You know, it's we're in a day where you can get a bag of Cheetos cheaper than you can get an apple. And that bag of Cheetos is going to do far more to your health than that apple is, in a much negative way. And that's going to drive up the cost of Medicaid and Medicare, because you've got people unhealthy from eating unhealthy foods that get to see a
Right.
doctor more often. That's going to cost more. They lean more on the government and
Well,
need
you look at
more assistance. And it's
the
a
biggest
horrible
issue you
cycle to
have right
repeat.
now with it is how many of these convenience stores now have that sign on their front door? We're now accepting EBT, SNAP, PIC,
yep,
all that.
good point.
No convenience store out here should be accepting anything. It should be done
I
at a
agree.
grocery store or big box grocery store or somewhere like that. But back to what Phoenix was talking about and everything, unconstitutional, right?
Thank you.
It's just been brought in and everything, right? So, what started a lot of this and everything, y'all got to look back at the Great Depression when this country collapsed and everything. That's when Social Security was started, and that's when the welfare program was started. Back in, there were so many families out there that couldn't afford to eat and everything. So the government's got the money. There's a lot of programs that your tax dollars are taken out for that's not in the Constitution and being spread out. Just like we'll bring up the road tax. Okay. Yeah, they passed a law where you got to pay this road tax. But I'll pay for the roads in my area. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to pay for the roads in Kansas City. I'm not going to pay for the roads in St. Louis. But I don't have control of that and stuff. So it's the same thing brought in. Federal Roosevelt brought it all in and everything. Brought the workers program up, WPA. My grandfather, Papa, started on that, making 25 cents a day on the WPA. With that money he saved up, he bought a 25-acre farm. Money he saved up, he bought his very first dump truck. When the man was 79 years old and passed away, I didn't know, Papa wasn't one of these to spread his money here, there, and yonder, but he'd help everybody he could. When he passed away, we found out he had over $700,000 sitting in the bank from the dump trucks, but he started out in the WPA. But boiling back to the welfare system would be a lot better off if the caseworkers out there would do their proper job and investigate and keep track of what their people are doing, right? And, and this is nothing against Phoenix and all her kids, right? Massive amount of kids. I'm not saying anything about that, Phoenix. But there for a while in the 60s and 70s, girls on welfare, mothers on welfare. If you had a baby, you got more money. They were baby factories.
Well,
back
That
then.
that hadn't ended.
Right. That
I'm not,
kind
yeah,
of
I'm not saying that's
that
you.
kind of
I'm just
slowed things down because the food program is a good program. I'm not going to complain about it
yeah.
and everything. If my tax dollars want to go out and help somebody, then let it be. But use it in the correct way.
Yeah.
Don't go to a convenience store. Don't buy that pre-cooked chicken. Don't buy that pizza, that soda pop, those chips. Go to the grocery store, get a whole chicken and cook it. It'll feed your family for a day or two.
Exact
It comes down
potatoes.
to it.
Yeah.
But there again, Congress, if they're going to do something like this, they need to vote it into law. And then everybody would be satisfied with it.
Yeah, I
But
think
they
that's a
haven't
fair
done
point.
that yet.
So,
Especially like the caseworkers, they've really just been people that are trying to get the people onto the program, not necessarily determine whether or not they should be on the program.
Right.
Right.
They keep them on it.
And that's just part of the attraction of the job. So that's kind of the thing with the education system right now. The people that are teachers or educators, that's their passion, but then you have some people that are also just wanting to control people or have an influence, like they have their own little agenda that they want to push on the kids. So yeah, that's an interesting point. So yeah, I agree, Carl, that we
Bill.
still it
Johnson
down to
did do a lot of that.
So I don't know why I went into this thinking we would have more in common than what we do. I'm going to be the all ball out and still stand my ground. Just because the law is passed, of course, you kept bringing up, Mitch, it's not criminal. I never once said it's criminal. I said many times it is legalized theft because Congress passed the law. I never one time said it's criminal. But just because our Congress passes laws doesn't make it constitutional. we have a crap load of laws that Congress passes that are not constitutional. I thought that was one thing that all four of us would agree on, and we don't. And I'm sitting here
I mean,
flabbergasted
I agree.
that we all say we support the Constitution, yet when it comes to this, our bleeding hearts say, oh, but this is different. And we go on emotional tirades.
Well, I mean, the Constitution specifically.
To where, we are not supposed to fringe on other people's rights. That is constitutional. We are not. So when the government passes a lot of these laws, including a law, whether I was born or not, where I have no say, you said it exactly, James, and I think it was you, James, might have been Carl, said, we don't even get to vote on these. It might have been you with the road tax, Carl, said, we don't even get to vote. Hello?
Mm-hmm.
We are supposed to. We are supposed to be a country for the people of the people. Who is asking us which one of these laws we want passed, especially when you're going to take the money I go out and work for? I don't care if it's welfare, roads, or whatever. Who is asking the constituents in their communities what laws we want passed? We have a bunch of power-hungry people sitting in Congress passing a bunch of laws that they want passed and playing on our emotions to make a lot of them sound good to us. Because if they can play our emotions, we're going to jump on board and say, take my rights, take my money, take this, take that. We are not supposed to infringe on other people's rights, which is why I say some of these laws are unconstitutional. And I'm flabbergasted that so many people cannot look and say two things may be true at the same time. These laws may be passed and legal now, but that does not make them constitutional because I have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When I have laws passed telling me that I can go work 40 hours, my husband can go bust his ass for 40 hours, 60 hours. There for a while, my husband was working 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, mandatory. And you're going to tell us to bust our ass, and we have no say in whether you take our money to give to somebody else for whatever you deem is a worthwhile cause? You are infringing on my constitutional right to the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. I work for that money. And who asked the public if that was a law we wanted passed? Or if we want to come up with another way to take care of the people in need? I'll be the first to stand up for the people in genuine need. Absolutely. We need to help as a moral issue, help take care of the people in need. But we cannot be such soft-hearted people that we are trampling on everybody else's rights to take care of a few people. The people in this country who need legitimate help are a minority group of the population. We cannot trample on the majority for the few. We cannot allow our congressmen and senators to continue to take from us what is not theirs to take, to cater to a select few group of people. There have to be some other answers. Now, were the laws passed and are they going to get overturned? No, I can agree with y'all. They're done. It is what it is. Suck it up, buttercup, whatever. Get it. Put my big girl panties on. The laws are done. I get it. But it does not change the fact that the laws were not constitutional and they are trampling on everybody else's rights. And I guarantee you, when those laws were passed, nobody asked their constituents how they felt about it. They were just passed and done. Just like Carl said, I'm not paying for the roads in my area, but I wasn't asked. I don't agree with abortion. I don't want my tax money going to abortion. That is against my religious views to take my tax money and give it to Planned Parenthood and have my tax money help fund abortions, you're trampling on my right to my religious beliefs. Nobody asked me if I wanted my tax money to support abortions, which is so fundamentally abhorrent to me on all levels and tramples on my rights. We are not being asked by our Congress and our senators what laws we want and where we want our money to go. We have a very small group of people sitting up there thinking they are something so special that they just get to pass whatever laws and tell us how much money they're taking and what it's for. And we just sit here and say, okay, 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 keep taking, keep taking. Well, I don't like it, but it is what it is. No, we need to start holding our politicians accountable that the laws should
Yeah.
comply with the Constitution. And if we cannot sit here and say that these laws I'm bringing up are not constitutional, we can't even agree on that. That is a problem. I can agree the laws here is not going to get repealed. So how do we revamp it? I'm with y'all 100% on that. But I'm baffled that nobody sitting here can agree that those congressmen and senators who passed the laws did not trample on everybody's rights when they passed a lot of them.
Well,
I'm
I think
baffled by this.
I think it's just the general interpretation of the general welfare of the public, right? That's where that
Well,
comes from. That's in the Constitution. So
Your problem is not my problem. That's
Yeah,
the truth of it. That is the bottom line.
Yeah.
We have moral obligations, but we should not be forced legally.
well,
My
you
family's
bring up,
problems are not the next door neighbor's problems. It sounds cold, but is there not a reality to it? Let's think about it this way. How many times do we have someone we know who's an acquaintance or a friend and they call us nonstop to cry over a problem? And we hang up
I,
the phone saying, man, their problem is not my problem. I have my own problems in my house to deal with, and they're just blowing me up and beating me up with their problem. It is not my problem. I have my own. Yet when it comes to these things, oh no, that's different. Everybody's problem is our problem. And we're a bunch of bleeding hearts, which gets our country into so much crap because we don't even really call them out when they're sending our money overseas. Now, I can agree maybe more on top of it to have some kind of program for the people like in your situation, Mitch, Tammy's situation. You know, there are people who legitimately need the help. I might be more on board to say, okay, keep the law for that. But when we have able bodied working people, why? I don't think that the pursuit that the definition of pursuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness really needs that much interpretation. Life, my right to survive and provide for my own family, they are my priority. That is the harsh, cold reality of it. They are my priority, not the guy across town, not the man in California. My family is my number one priority. And we are such a society of bleeding hearts that we allow the government to take, and keep giving to other people to where it gets harder and harder to prioritize our family and feed our own families. Like I said, I sound harsh and cold. And I sound like I don't have compassion. And I get I don't sound like I do. But I have turned my life upside down, my finances upside down to help people. But it was my choice to do it. When it is not my choice, you are trampling on my rights to protect and provide for my own family.
to
So
kind of
where's
tie,
the balance? Where is the balance? Exactly, Bill. You know, I mean, some of this is just ridiculous. And then if we want to have these programs for people who can work and in need, well, let's use what happened again with my husband and I, where he got hit with something. We had an attorney handling something for us. The attorney said, y'all don't need to go. It is for attorneys only. The client is not coming. It's just attorneys meeting with the judge. Guess what? Our attorney didn't show up. So we got a default judgment. Didn't even know it. Our attorney disappeared on us when he realized he screwed up. He wouldn't take our calls, wouldn't let us come in his office. Like he disappeared because he screwed up. He sent us a letter that came after the garnishment saying, you'll have a lawsuit against me because I screwed up. But if you sign a waiver, you know that you won't sue me, I will fix this for you. Well, we signed that waiver and said, get back into court and fix it because you just took everything from us. You don't know what you just cost us. Go fix it. As soon as he got that paper signed, he disappeared and never spoke to us again. We tried to sue over that, saying we felt he defrauded us by having us sign that with the agreement he'd fix it, and he didn't. He disappeared. No attorney would touch it. One attorney said, you're not going to find one who will do it. Attorneys don't sue attorneys. They're going to protect each other, which is what happened. So guess who got screwed? Us. So we found out the day before. We had rent coming up due that week. Guess what? We got a letter from the court the day before my husband got paid. The day before. No time to prepare. The day before. Guess how much my husband brought home? $200. How do you pay rent? Buy groceries. Pay your electric. James, I know you didn't know how bad we were hurting. Amanda knew a little bit. But how the hell were we supposed to survive on $200 a week? And to tell me that garnishment didn't count? Where was compassion for my family? The hard reality was our problem was our problem. The system did not allow for our car payments. They didn't allow for that garnishment. We were being left to be put on the street while he still got paid, and they took out money to give to everybody else who was in need. Gosh dang it, my family was in need. You're telling me I have to pay into something? You're going to take money from me to give to somebody else because they're in need? But when I'm in need, and I can show you all the paperwork, say we're trying to make it off $200 a week with 3 kids, and I can't touch my own money that I pay in. You can take my money because you're in need. But when I am in legitimate need, I can't touch my own money that I pay in. And you think I'm not angry? Hell yes, I'm angry. I can have compassion for the people who need help legitimately, who cannot work due to health and stuff. But don't sit here and blow smoke at my backside saying it's here for people who need a little bit of help temporarily. And yet when people need that help legitimately and they're being forced to pay into it and take care of other people, oh, but you can't touch it. Your husband makes too much money. Gosh dang it, for the next 2 months, he's bringing in $200 a month. Now you tell me how we're going to survive. So don't sit there and tell me it's not a form of legalized theft. It is a form of theft. It may not be criminal theft, but it is legalized theft. I can get on board and agree with y'all that for the people in those health situations, help them out. Let's put something in place. Absolutely, I don't want to see people hurt. But just like when my husband and I went through it, nobody was shedding tears for us. Nobody was knocking on our front door, the people who knew we were hurting, whether they knew how bad or not, who showed up at my front door bringing us food. Who brought us just a $1 4-roll pack of generic toilet paper from Walmart that cost $1.30. Nobody had a bleeding heart for us because they felt like some people who knew said, well, y'all got yourselves into it. No, we were told this was not for us. Only attorneys go. He did not go. This falls at his feet here. We did not, we were still fighting the original thing. We got thrown a legitimate curveball. Nobody cried for us. Nobody had a bleeding heart for us. Because they see where we live. They see the car I drive. So they assume we have money we didn't have. And even when I could show he's bringing up 200 a week, oh, well, our system's not set up to acknowledge that. So it still shows your husband is making the money that he is, even though I can see you need it. When I cannot touch my own money that I pay in when I need it and legitimately needed it to feed my kids, don't tell me it's not a form of theft. Because I'm not going to get on board with you. You can say it, but I will not get on board with it. The law might make it legal, but it doesn't change the fact that it is theft. So if we're going to have to agree to disagree on whether it's theft or not. How do we fix this?
Well, everything in the government is legal theft. You know that as well as I do.
Exactly. Thank you for at least admitting to that.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
everything
my God.
is.
Well, no,
You know,
I mean, for the whole show,
but
when I sat here quiet, I kept
everything
saying
else,
it's
you
not
know.
theft. It's not theft. Yes, it is. No, it's not theft. It is theft.
Well, everything
It's
is
just
like
we let
that.
our congressmen and senators keep doing it to us. We don't hold them accountable to it. They trample on us all the time, not just with welfare, with everything, and we let them do it.
But how do you recommend we fund programs?
Yeah, how you recommend
How do
we're
we
gonna
fund
stop
government
all this
programs
illegal
without
crap?
paying out of your paycheck? If you keep every single dime of yours, who pays for all the programs? Who pays for the school? Who pays for the roads? Who pays for everything? The infrastructure, the electrical grid, the cell phone network, who pays for all those things?
There are certain things that we should all be able to vote on. And what we
We do
think.
vote.
No, I can tell you, I've
You
never
get your
had someone.
representatives.
I have, and they don't ask me what laws I want passed. I've never been asked one time by my
Okay.
congressman.
You vote
and
for them
senator.
based on their beliefs, based on what they run. You
If
vote
I
we
don't
based on
ask
their
them to
campaign.
go vote on their personal belief. I ask them to go vote based on what their constituents' beliefs are, not their own personal belief. They're supposed to represent the constituent, not themselves when they go vote.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if they don't
vote for the
represent the
person that-
constituent, they're
represent
supposed to
the
get voted
that
out.
voted them. They represent the
Exactly.
person that
Bill
voted them
Harris
in.
was supposed to pay for it. There was a time when there were a lot of taxes being passed that tariffs paid for it. There are other options besides taxing your people to death, and you're killing the middle class. The middle
Well,
class is being bent over
I
the
agree. You're
table,
killing the middle
and
class.
not even a thing of lubricant. You're killing the middle class. We are the ones ultimately paying the most for all these programs or roads or schools or anything. That's the other thing I brought up that made me mad is that Kentucky voted down school choice. Who the hell are you to tell me that because I live here, my child has to go to this school? I can't put him over here.
The teachers' unions. That's who.
Thank you.
That's who
And I don't
funded
agree
that.
with that, but I
Right.
think you still got to pay regardless. You're still paying for your student regardless.
Why
Even
can't
if
my
you'd
money
gotten
follow
to,
my student? If
that
I
would have
put
been
my
fine.
daughter
Even
in
if that
public
had gotten,
school,
even if you'd gotten your way, you still would have been paying. You still would have been sticking money out of your pocket, even if you got
it
your
still
way.
should follow my daughter. If my daughter wakes up crying every
But you're
morning,
complaining about
that's
money being taken out. That money's going to be taken out regardless.
but
It
I
doesn't
don't
matter
think
where your
it should
child
be
goes to school. The
unless
money's
you
being
have
taken out, and that's what
in
we're
that
arguing.
system. Why are people paying when they don't have kids in that system? I homeschooled
Because
last
we
year.
need more educated people in this world. We don't have enough of them.
The education system is failing. We
It
pay.
is. It
We
is.
pay. We are one of the top countries for sinking money into the education, and yet our kids are coming out dumber and dumber. So it's not a money
Yeah.
issue. It's
Right.
not a money issue. It is holding these teachers accountable.
Well,
We
part of
need
it's a
good
money issue
teachers.
because you're not paying the teachers a fair salary. Who wants to go
That's
teach
not
inner
part
city
of it.
students for
That's
You
not
got to
part of
remember,
it.
$25,000 a
when you
year?
vote on
That is a
something,
huge part of it.
everybody's
You
not going
can't
to be
get good
happy.
teachers
Somebody's
because
got
you
to
can't
lose
get a
in the
good salary as a
situation.
teacher.
Okay,
Nobody
so
wants to be a teacher aside from the fact that they actually want to.
then
They don't do
don't
it for
do it.
money.
Then don't do it.
Well,
Because I don't
So then
get
you
to
have
go
no
to work.
teachers.
Hold on. I don't get to go to work. When I worked at Toyota and met Ken, I didn't get to go to work and say, well, Ford pays more than Toyota. So because I don't think I'm getting a good wage, I'm going to half-ass my job. I would have
That's
been
how that
fired.
works. It's called a fair working
Hold on.
wage.
Hold on. Hold on. And they accept they accept the pay they get. If I go to Toyota and I half-ass it and I stand around there like your quality's falling apart, Phoenix. You're putting on the door on the side of these cars, and by the time they get to buy off, the door falls off. Well, yeah, I'm not
That's
putting
what
the
should have paid
bolts
for
in.
better employment.
I'm just setting it on the car, but I'm not bolting it in. Guess what? They're going to fire me. I can't look at them and say, well, pay me a better wage. You're not paying me
No,
a
but that's
better wage.
where your workforce comes together, just like your citizens vote. You come together and you demand equal pay. If all
Okay,
of your
but
employees walk out
your
of that
point
company,
was,
the company goes under. It's that simple. Most companies can't
so the
afford
school
business for
system
out a
should
week.
go under. Stop funding it until teachers start doing their job. If you cannot
Teachers
put
aren't
out
paid enough to
children,
do their jobs.
well,
what a
Teachers are not
crappy
paid
thing
enough.
to say. What an absolutely crappy thing to say. That they don't have to go to work. We're putting them in charge of educating our children, but they don't have to do their job. If they're not getting paid enough, then don't accept the job. Go work somewhere else. If you're offered a wage and you accept it, you are accepting it, saying it is acceptable enough to
We
take the
don't
job
have teachers.
and,
They are
and give
going other way.
100%.
We
there's
have
a
a
lot of
shortage
people
of
that,
teachers.
that aren't
There's a
teachers because
massive
the pay is
shortage.
so low. They go somewhere
And
else.
that's fine.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
fine with that. Yes, that's my
that's
point.
But
not fine.
that's why we end up
That's
with
not
poor
a good
teachers
thing.
though. All of the
You got to
talent
have
goes
teachers.
and does something else that pays more, right? So you have all the talent. See, that's what I was saying earlier about the people that are
Exactly, Bill.
teachers now. They're the people that are really either they have a passion for teaching students or they have an agenda to push. It's never
Yeah,
about the pay. Everybody knows it's not about the pay.
no.
Whereas
And
if
you're
you
not going
had
to
a
get a good
higher wage, you might attract some people, the skilled talent to actually go there and teach. I'm not saying that you have to give more. I think Bill's absolutely right. That the Department of Education has been stealing all the money that we've been sending. So even though
Right.
we've been spending more, it hasn't actually gone to educating the students, and that's been the problem. And a lot of this is all the same thing. Actually, I think we're kind of at a point in history right now with this administration specifically, where we've looked and seen where we came from and where we are. We saw what the Biden administration tried to do to this country, and we said, oh, hell no. And we're saying now, enough is enough. We're holding people accountable now. Now is the time. Fuck around and find out. Okay. That's where we're at in history. Okay. And we
Yeah.
need to start holding people accountable for this shit because all the things that we're talking about, the welfare system, people abusing the system, politicians not representing their people, the Department of Education stealing money from our fucking children, all of it comes back to not holding people accountable, and it's got to stop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hopefully I pray to God that the current administration isn't just full of shit, and I believe that they aren't. I fully believe that we're going to hold people's feet to the fire, but we got to start holding
Right.
people's feet to the fire because if we don't,
Yeah.
history's going to repeat itself. We're going to be sitting here and just talking about the same damn thing over and over again. And I think part of it
Yeah.
too is now that we're at this point in history where we're like, okay, this is enough. We're reevaluating what we've done, things that we've done haven't worked, people haven't been held accountable. We have to look and see what other options do we have for these systems. So for example, we may not like the way welfare system works right now, where they take money from people and give to someone else. like I said the other night off air, I said, hey, maybe make it an optional system. Start thinking about different ways that we can do these things, just like Trump completely demolishing the Department of Education, separating it out into all the other groups because they can do those things, right?
Right.
Thinking differently about these things that we've done for so long. And that's the hard part for people to understand. That's why you have liberals who freak out whenever you talk about the Department of Education going away, because they can't imagine anything else. Because honestly, a lot of them just aren't quite all there mentally to begin with. I mean, see the men and women's sports thing that's just all over. I don't even understand how it's a debate, but that's the point, right? They're not quite all there. So having those ideas, seeing where we were, seeing where we are today, holding people accountable, and then thinking and being, thinking about different ways to do things in the future,
Right.
to just move forward. And so I think we're all kind of, we're at that point now in history, and all of this just ties back to those three things.
100%. It needs, people need to be held accountable, and there's corruption in every single system, and every single branch, and every single little leaf of the government. There's corruption, 110%.
That's why we have
But
Doge.
that being said, we do got to flush all that out. We got to do a revamp of everything. But at the end of the day, these core programs, these programs that we're paying for out of our paychecks, every single paycheck, we still have to have those programs. We still have to fund those programs. We will always be funding schools. We will always fund roads because they have to be funded.
In some
You can't sit
capacity
here
or
and tell me
Right.
you've never drove on an interstate, or you've
Maybe not the same way
you've
we
never
do
taken
today.
a plane. But everybody's used infrastructure,
And it
that
may
is
not come
covered
out of our
in-
pockets. It may not come out of our pockets, Mitch. Like Bill's saying, the tariffs thing is another great example of that. We've been allowing these other countries to steal from us for so damn long, and Trump finally comes in and says, "Hey, look
Right,
at
and we
this!
can't
They're putting
fund-
hundreds of percent of tariff on our products. We're going to start, reciprocating." And the liberals' fucking minds explode, right? And it's the same deal. We can actually use those tariffs, that income from those tariffs, to eliminate the whole conversation we've had tonight about taking from us and giving to someone else, right? Because then you don't have to take from me.
I don't think you're going to eliminate it. I don't think you're going to eliminate it.
Maybe not
You can
completely,
definitely subsidize it with tariffs for
Right,
sure.
but that's
But
my
there's always going to be that limit that we have to pick up. Even if it's 5 cents out of our paycheck, $5 out of our paycheck, we will always have to pay something forward. We'll never get America built relying on the other nations to pay our way.
Maybe.
And that's what you're asking for.
I mean, you can't say never. It's not impossible, but
How are you gonna? I mean, it's
more.
I don't know
more
how
than
you would do
likely.
it.
Well, through
I mean,
tariff.
you can only tariff something so much before people quit buying it.
Okay, but like Bill said, 90% of our programs our laws could be wiped off the books. That take a lot of this money.
Oh yeah.
We're looking at what we are paying out now on everything. Well, we've got to get rid of some of it. Some of the stuff has to go. And James
You
proved
thin
my
it,
point.
you can't get rid of it.
James proved my point exactly when he said we are not holding people accountable. No, we make excuses. And that's what got me, Mitch, is when you made excuses for teachers. There's no excuse for anybody going to be in charge of our children who are our future, and they half-ass it, and we give a reason why it's okay that they half-ass it. And
I'm not doing that at all. I'm not saying it's okay for them to have.
I don't think you were saying
you're not going to get a teacher that gives a damn when you pay $26,000.
But then they should not take the job. No,
$56,000 a year. Do you think anybody's going to be a good teacher for $56,000 a year?
If they don't
Would
think
you deal with a room full of high schoolers for
$56,000 is a whole lot more than a lot of people make. And those people making $30,000 or $20,000, a lot of them go put 100% in because it's their character. And we don't justify people half-assing. Let me tell you let me bring it to you this way. Here's where I felt it was a justification.
Well, hold on 1 second, Phoenix, real quick. I don't think Mitch was saying that it was okay that they do that. I think he was pointing out that is actually why that's happening. Is because
I get that's why. I get that's part of why.
He's not saying that it was okay that they were.
Maybe it's just the wording. Right. Maybe it's the way it was worded that it came out sounding like that. And if that's the case, then I apologize.
Yeah.
But it sounded like the way it came across to me was, well, they don't get paid enough. I don't care if I offer that teacher $1 an hour to teach my daughter. If she says, yes, I will teach your daughter for $1 an hour, then I expect her to put in 100% because she is in
Yeah,
charge of my daughter's education. My
and
daughter's
that's
the
fair.
so there
But do
is
you think you're
no
going to get a teacher that's worth a
reason.
damn for $1 an hour?
Well, if she accepts it, if
Well,
she
yeah,
does
but I
not,
Do
mean,
you
if
think you're
she
The
going
does,
to get a
point
hold on, if
is,
teacher
she does
worth a
if
not
they
damn
get
for a
accept
dollar
the
an
accepted, if
hour?
money,
she
then
was
they
to
ought to
say,
do the job.
well, yeah,
no,
but they ought to. But that's the thing, though, is
Yeah,
they
you
ought
think it's
to.
going to
But
happen?
you
Ought
can't
to.
force them
Yeah.
to, right?
Right.
that's
That's
my
the whole
point.
No.
point. Is if you try, you can't.
Teachers
They
ought
ought
to
to
work
do
for
it,
free.
but they probably won't.
Paramedics, policemen, firemen, they ought to work for free because it's doing its community a good reason or a good service, right? That's why they go into it. It's to help
Hell
the
no.
community. They should do it for free, right?
Hell no.
How's being a
Hell
teacher any
no.
different than a paramedic,
But
a
let me
fireman, a
tell you
policeman,
something.
anything?
Hell no.
How's it any
Because let
different?
me tell you, when I was a paramedic and I was a firefighter, let me put it to you this way. Do you know what I got paid when I moved? I got $7.25 in Ohio an hour to save people's lives.
Yeah.
Not just because grandma pukes in the back seat. Now tell me
Yeah.
that I got
That's
paid
true,
what
Bill.
would be
I agree.
considered a fair wage. No, I did not. I have pulled up on accident scenes where I had a truck that had rolled over
And
and
did you stay with that
the
job?
person's head came out the window and decapitated them. And I had to go search for the head that rolled off the body down into the ditch. I've helped
And did
hold
you stay with
people's
that?
heads together. And you know what? I gave 100%. And
Right,
no
but did you
one
stick
looks at
with
a
it?
pair. I did. I did until I moved out of state. I did stay with it because you know what? People needed it, and I accepted the $7.25. If I'm going to accept it, that is me saying, I think what you're offering me is good enough that I'm going to take the job. So imagine if I take the job for $7.25, heart stop on you. I half-assed did my job. You did not survive because I did not do it 100% because I look at it as I'm only getting paid $7.25. Why am I going to really invest into this man? I don't even know him, and I'm not getting paid a livable wage. I'm only getting
If you're happy
$7.25.
with your wage, you're going to do it
Hold on a
100%.
second. Hold on. I'm trying to make a point, and I want you personally to respond. Y'all can too, but I mean you, Mitch. So my thing is, like you don't survive, but you got your little girl. Now imagine the disrespect that your daughter would feel burying her daddy. And somebody looks at her and says, well, what did you expect from those paramedics? Do you think you're going to get paramedics that are worth a damn if they're only getting paid $7.25? Your daughter's going to say, yes, I expect the paramedics who worked on my daddy to give everything they could to save his life. I did not think they would accept the job with that pay and half-ass it and let my daddy die. I expected them to do their job and do it 100%. And if they do it 100% and God takes him, then it was out of their hands. But if they walk in and half-ass it because who's going to be a good paramedic for $7.25? And they did not do everything they could to save my daddy, she would have every right to sue because we have a job to do. And if I'm not okay with $7.25, then I don't take the job. And you know what? When I moved to Kentucky and I was a single mom, I did it in Ohio because I was not a single mom. I was in a relationship where I had help. But when I moved to Kentucky and I left that relationship and I had to take care of my 9 children, $7.25 was not going to support my children. So did I do my national registry to get reciprocity here in Kentucky? No, I didn't. You know what I did while I looked for a decent paying job? I took a job for $8 at McDonald's. How shameful that I can go as an opener for McDonald's and make more money than I do, literally sometimes saving someone's life. I have had people's lives in my hands, literally, and I could get paid more at McDonald's. But I never, ever heard someone say, well, do you think you're going to get a good paramedic if you're only going to pay him $7.25 an hour? So why do we say it about teachers? We expect people, if they accept the job and they know the pay, we still expect them to do their job.
Yeah,
And James
I
is
don't
I
right.
think.
agree.
They have to be held accountable.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just
I,
think part of it is that
uh,
if they think that they're getting paid below what they're worth, then they're going to go somewhere else where they can make more money. And that's where you end up with people, the lower quality of the people that can't go somewhere else, or they feel like they're not worth, or and especially
Good night, Joe.
in the case of EMTs, firefighters, police, or even teachers, right? Public servants in general. They may take a lower wage just because they enjoy the feeling that they get from helping other people in the job, right? And so that's part of the reason why they can offer those lower paying wages. That was like me whenever I worked for the autism center. I got paid minimum wage and I got hit, kicked, bit, and shit on a daily basis. But I tell you, the day that I left that place, I had to leave because I literally was paying for college out of my pocket, and I literally had no more money in my wallet. I had to leave for financial reasons. Otherwise, I couldn't pay for my tuition, couldn't afford my bills. I cried the whole way home because, and I still have dreams every once in a while of those kids. Because let me tell you something, those kids are I swear, like they are the most needy. I don't want to say needy, but in need population. Children, young children with severe autism. And the problem is that even in states like Illinois, that have a lot of these a lot of high public funded programs, they still pay people minimum wage, and they don't pay anything to the people that are taking care of these children on a daily basis. And it's just really sad, man.
Right.
Right.
But that's kind of my point, is that I stayed there because it was kind of a calling for me. I wanted to help those kids. I loved helping those kids. I can tell you, I'm sure we'll talk about some stories later on that will just melt your heart. And then also terrify you too, not because of what happened, but because of just some of the things that go on. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but so in those cases, yeah, maybe people stay for a lesser pay. I would have liked to have gotten paid more. Maybe if
Right.
I was another job with similar responsibilities where I was helping other people that paid a little bit more, I would go do that.
Yeah.
But and the same could be said with teachers too. So I think you have some that are going to leave or not be attracted to it because the wage is too low. Or they'll be in the position and then they'll say, oh, now I've got some experience and then I can go work at a university and get paid a little bit more. Or you have those people that are going to stay because it's a calling and they like the job itself. And honestly, there's a lot of benefits too. So yeah, teachers may get paid less, but what people tend to forget about that is that they have the whole summer off too. Oh, in some
Right.
states, sorry.
Right.
Or they have a couple extra days off a week, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If they do year round. So
Well,
Right.
we're coming up. We got a minute left, so let's wrap it
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
Kenny.
I'm going to shut up.
That's all right, James.
No,
No,
but
good
the
call.
last comment, I think we have time for everybody to give one last comment, to kind of close it out. And, my point, what I am one of those people. I also volunteered on 5 different departments as well, and I didn't get paid a dime. I did that because I care. I did that because it helped me heal from, my husband's murder. And to this day, we never got justice. His killer's still out there walking. My husband was a airborne ranger. He went in the military in 1978. And the guys that killed him, they know who it is, and they use that against him. trying to say it was self-defense. Nobody had a weapon except the guys that killed him. But they said, we know it's military training, so we felt threatened. And it's just sat, you know, it's never gone anywhere. So to this day, we have never had closure, you know, outside of us just trying to come to terms that it is what it is. And one day those guys will stand before God, you know, and we just have to try to be content with that because we can't change it. So me volunteering was very much a way for me to heal and try to make sure that no other wife got the phone call I got, because I would never want someone to get that phone call. I would never want your daughter Mitch to get the phone call that you weren't coming home. And I am so grateful that you got to come home to her. I would never want someone to go through what I did or what my children did. And so it is very healing. That was one of those jobs that I did because I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But do I think we need to make sure that certain people get paid more? Yeah. 725 was ridiculous, but I accepted it because it's something I wanted to do to give back to my community. I had two roads to go down. I could either let what happened to us make me bitter and lash out and basically die with my husband, or I could take the Bible's approach, which says that a wife is the jewels on her husband's crown. And nobody knows my husband, but I hope that there's enough good in me that the people who know me get a glimpse of who my husband was through me and what he added to my life. And to get just a small glimpse through me and what I give to society and to people to understand what he helped grow inside of me, because he was 13 years older than me. And don't think he didn't teach me a lot about life. Don't think I didn't grow up being with someone like that and building a business and everything we accomplished. And so I hope that also through me, that it gives people a small shred of an inkling of who he was and what he added to me and created inside of me, and the strength and things that I gained to survive through that. I do think our teachers need to get paid more. I think a lot of stuff needs to be done different so that our teachers can get paid more. But I don't want to see us sit there and also at the same time try to kind of justify why we're not finding good people to teach our children, or why we're not finding good paramedics, or why we're not finding good anything. If you accept the job and you accept the pay, then you put in 100% until you find something better, or until we can get rid of enough corruption that we can up your pay, you know. But it's something that we fight for and we work for. But in the meantime, if you accept the job and the pay, then understand what you are investing into our future or into people's, you know, homes and families, and you give 100%, because we're not creating a bright future, you know, coming up through the school system. And we can't look at the pay and say, well, that's why. You know, we have to hold these teachers accountable and say, if you take the job, teach these kids, because they're going to be the ones running the country one day. They have to read, they have to add, they have to subtract, et cetera, et cetera. And if you half-ass your job because you don't like the pay, we're going to hold you accountable. We can work on getting you more money, but you still have to understand the role you play for our future. And you have to do your job. Otherwise, we have to fire you. So that's what I'm going to end on, is it does come down to a lot of accountability. And we got to find a way to come together, whether we agree on everything or not. There has to be a point that we can come together and say that we all love our country. We all love our fellow human beings, no matter bad wording, bad whatever. The baseline is we all love each other, you know, in some humanity form. Even if I don't know the stranger down the road, that doesn't mean I want to see him suffer. There's still a human side of me that has a certain amount of compassion and love for the stranger down the road, you know. And we can all agree that most of us are there. So we got to start also trying to figure out, as a society as a whole, from one side of the country to the other, how do we start holding these politicians more accountable on the laws they pass? And, to try to make things better. And, one other idea was for families like us, if that were to happen again, quit just going by this one mind, this one set of, oh, well, you don't qualify. Look at the person's situation. If they're showing you they really don't have the money, give them the dang help, or don't force them to pay in. But I just think the way we go about a lot of this stuff is, in a sense, so fraudulent, because who's benefiting the most? It's not even people like Tammy or you, Mitch. It's the government. They are benefiting more than the citizen. So I like what Trump is doing, or what it seems like he's doing. I like what Doge is doing. We got to start flushing this stuff out, but we can't be complacent and not holding the politicians accountable. So that's where I'm going to end my comments tonight. If y'all have something to say to end it and close it out, feel free to, and then we'll let Carl wish everybody a good night.
I'm good.
I agree. I think we just need to do better.
Right.
So expect more and do better.
Hold
That's
people
it.
accountable.
Well, we want to thank everybody that joined us in the chat room tonight. Good comments coming in and everything. Always catch us here Tuesday night on Life Unfiltered and stuff. You never know what the topic's going to be. We'll figure stuff out. So everybody have a good evening, and we'll see you next Tuesday here on Life Unfiltered. Have a good
Good night,
evening.
everyone.
Oh, yeah.